Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aspie Drummer. I'm Johnny, aka Aspie Drummer. Um, this is going to be the first of a series of lessons because I thought it would be cool to put out some drum lessons out there. I'm autistic. Asperger's is what we call what I have, ASD. So I learned to play drums when I was 12 years old, and I learned differently from everyone else. So I thought it would be nice to put a video out there to show how I teach, uh, because it's important that we realize that not everybody learns the same way. So when I teach my students, I've gotten some great feedback on how I'm very visualistic on how I teach them. So I thought I would start posting some of this stuff. So today's lesson is just going to be Basics 101 for the beginner who's never played. And we're going to walk through the drum kit, what I wear, stuff like that, and the basic beats and some drum rolls in lesson number 1. So I guess we're going to get started. One of the things that I like to do is wear some good footwear. So I usually buy these guys. These are called swimming shoes. You can get them at basically any sports store, or if you're in Canada, you can get them at Canadian Tire. That's where I got these. So these are shoes for swimming when you go on the beach and you don't want to feel the sand on your feet, stuff like that. And what's cool about them is that they are very flexible and they have a really nice grip on the pedal, but they let you slide. So they're almost like a dancing shoe, very pliable, very light, so you don't even know you have them on. So that's something that I suggest, and wearing jogging pants or shorts, whatever. But anyways, let's start with walking around the drum kit. This is obviously an enhanced drum kit, so we're not going to focus on all the drums. What we're going to focus on today are 3 components, even though I'm going to walk you through some of the other stuff. So a basic drum kit would be what we would call a 5-piece drum kit, which would include your bass drum, this guy, which is what you hit with the pedal, and you use your foot, obviously. Then we would have the snare drum in front of you, which is this guy. Call a snare drum because underneath it there are some little chains, or more like twisted metal, and they're called snares. That's why it's called a snare drum. Marching bands use them. The military uses them, or they used to use them, stuff like that. It's a long history on drums. We can get into that another time. So, snare, tom-toms, or rack toms. We got 1, 2, 3. So this one here is called a floor tom because it's on the floor. It's got 3 legs and it stands on its own. These are called rack toms because they are either sitting through on the bass drum with mounts, or they're sitting on a rack. I'm sitting on a rack. So this would be a 5-piece kit. So your 1 is your bass drum, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's what we would call a basic drum kit. That's the best thing to start off on. Now, on the cymbal side of things, we have the hi-hat, which is this guy here. This is the guy that gives you the... So that's what this does, and again, it is controlled by a foot pedal. But we're not going to worry about the pedal today. Next to my right here, if you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, it'll be the opposite, we have the ride cymbal. And there's a bell in it. So this here is what we do patterns on when we're doing a rhythm. Either quarter notes or eighth notes, but we're going to get into that after. And then we have our various crash cymbals. So we have different one here, different one here, and these all do that. Now, on a basic kit, you might have 1 crash, 1 ride, and a hi-hat. Naturally, this is an enhanced kit. Hi, doggy. How are you today? He likes to play drums. Right, Brembo? Come here. Say hi. Say hi. This is Brembo, and he loves to say hi to everyone. So, what we're going to do is start off with a basic beat. To do this, what's important is that your limbs, so your 2 legs, 2 arms, have to become separate from each other. The right side wants to do what the right side does. So your right hand is going to want to do what the right foot does, and vice versa with the left. When you're playing drums, you have to be able to get what we call independence of each limb. That's very important. So what I'm going to do is start off with, I'm going to release the clutch on the hi-hat. We don't want to worry about the pedal right now. We're going to keep this hi-hat closed. That's what's important. So what I'm going to do, a basic beat, I'm going to play this basic beat, and then we're going to break it down. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was probably one of the simplest beats. Any simpler than that, we'd just be going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can start with that as well. Foot, hand, foot, hand. Now you notice I counted at the beginning. I was doing a 1, 2, 3, 4. That's important. You don't have to read music, but what's important is to count. And when you're playing, it's important to count in your head or out loud at the same time so that you can keep the tempo going at the same rhythm the whole time. So let's break down this simple beat. You can't get any simpler. So the 1 is my bass drum. 1. The 2 is the snare, right? And then we go back to the bass drum. So let's break it down to 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. But in reality, we're going to count that as 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add the hi-hat. So the hi-hat is basically going to count every single beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's important. So what you want to do is, if you've never played, is start off by hitting the hi-hat and your bass drum at the same time together once. It'll give you this. That's 1. Then what you're going to want to do is go to the snare and the hi-hat at the same time, but don't hit the bass drum. This is where your limb independence is going to want to come in, and you're going to have a tendency of wanting to hit the bass drum because your hand's doing it too. That's something that's going to take a bit of work. And what I recommend is you do it in the air if you have to. Sit in the air and just do this. So first was bass drum hi-hat. Now we're going to do snare and hi-hat without the bass drum. And that's what we did. Then we go back to the bass drum and hi-hat. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. In reality, we're counting that 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's important to count. I cannot emphasize how important it is. Regardless if you're reading music or not, it's just important because your brain is going to want to connect to your body, and by doing it verbally, you're connecting some connections in your body that are allowing you to do so. So now a lot of people say, how is that such a simple beat, and what can it do? Well, it can do a lot, because if I was to take this beat and add 2 hits of my bass drum, it changes everything. So that's what we call, so what we just did is what we called quarter notes. Imagine $1. 4 quarters, so 4 25-cent coins make $1. Same with music. That quarter note is basically, you're looking at 1 bar, which is $1. So let's break that up into 25 cents, 25 cents, 25 cents, 25 cents. And that's essentially what we're getting at. Now, if I wanted to break that up, we're going to throw in what we call an 8th note on my bass drum. Again, this is for more advanced. So we're going to go with 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you heard I was counting 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the and is what we call the 8th note. But now, let's make this a little more complicated. Once you've mastered the 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to move on to something a little different where you're going to be doing what we call eighth notes with your right hand. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And I want you to count that. And it's going to go like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you can practice that. Now the 1 will always be on your bass drum. Rule of thumb. So let's hear what this beat sounds like. I'm doing the exact same thing on the bass drum and the snare, but I'm adding more notes on the hi-hat, which we call eighth notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now you got that. So sometimes some people skip right to that part because they find it easier to get a little bit of limb independence rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, let me break this down. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That is, again, a simple beat. Again, I can add, we got the eighth notes here. I can add an eighth note to this, which is a really common beat, probably the most common beat used in any songs anywhere, where it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Pretty simple beat. A lot of AC/DC, a lot of other stuff like that is a lot of that. So you can play a lot of rock stuff with this beat. Another thing that's important is knowing some paradiddles on the snare. Because when you can do them on the snare, then you can roll around on the toms, right? You can do drum rolls. So once you've mastered that, we're going to get into drum rolls. So what's important is exercising your wrists and your fingers. So we'll get into a bit of technique on holding the sticks. I should have done that first, but let's move on to that now. So the stick itself, you should hold it not tight. You just want a nice, loose enough grip, just like that. And I wrap my fingers around it, and I can use my fingers to move it. And I let the butt of the stick out a little bit. That's what's important, is letting the butt stick out. So this allows me to come up, as you can see my fingers, and then come back down and use my fingers. Now, the harder the stroke, I'm going to use my wrist. The smaller and faster the stroke, I move to my fingers, and that's what's important. So if I do this here on the tom, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to do it on the snare. 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason we don't want to hold the sticks too tight is when I hit it, I want that head, or we call the skin, for some people we call it a head, that actually it pushes back on the stick, right? Because for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So if I do this, and I let the stick go, it came up on its own. You see that? Because I'm not holding it tight. I'm letting it do that. And then you can do this. As you see, as my strokes get smaller and faster, I move over to my fingers. Okay? And that's what's important. So not just doing beats, but what's really important is doing the rolls, because very important. So when you're not on the drum kit practicing beats, it's nice if you have what we call a practice pad. Now, a practice pad, I don't have one around here. You can buy them at any music store. You can probably get it on Amazon. And you could sit, and they're silent, and it's got two rubber sides. One of them is a harder rubber, one's a softer rubber. So it helps to mimic the head of a drum. And you can sit on the couch, watch a movie, and just do paradiddles. So what I recommend is you start with, so again, when you're holding your sticks, do like an upside down V. That's what you want to do. That's how you want to do this. Your shoulders loose, your elbows out a bit, and just exercise, exercise, exercise. That's going to get you to move on. We don't want to go too far ahead of ourselves today, but that's really important that you do that over and over and over again. Don't try to go fast because you're not going to do yourself any favors. Even if you have to just sit there and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can hit your foot on the ground. Like stomp your foot if you want and count with your foot. So I'm going to do it with the bass drum. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what's important to do is counting. Again, you count with your head. As you see, you're going to build up what we call muscle memory, which means that every repetitive movement, it's going to become more natural to you. And when it becomes more natural, when you feel that you get an even flow and you're not forcing to do it and it's just becoming natural to you, then you can move on to a bit faster. If you have what we call a metronome, you can start off at like 70 beats per second, 80, whatever you want to do, beats per minute, sorry. And then you bring it up a notch when you feel comfortable. So you can start off with, and then after, a few days, you might be, I'm not exhausted. And I'm not exhausted because you're getting used to it, and your techniques improves as well. So that's very important. This is what's going to allow you to do a really nice drum roll. Let me get that to you now. If we were to do a drum roll, and if you didn't practice your paradiddles, what it would sound like. And I see it all the time because a lot of drummers, one of their big mistakes is trying to do a drum roll right off the bat. So here's, I'll try to imitate if you're trying to go too fast. So, a lot of times it's like that. What we really want is a nice fluid motion. It's got to look like it's not taking any effort because it shouldn't be a whole lot of effort once you get used to it. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it. So that'll help you with start. Let's go back to the beginning because before the next lesson, we want to see if you can work on what we were teaching today. So your paradiddles, just one at a time. Get used to that. Get used to holding the stick. And remember, use this as a pivot right here. You can use this as a pivot. It's what we call the fulcrum of the stick where it's well balanced. And that'll allow you to have it bounce back. Very important. Let's go back to the simple beat and see if you can practice that this week. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very simple. Later on, when you're done that, I'll move it a little ahead. Give you a preview of what you'll be able to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that gives you an example. So I hope this lesson was good for you. I'm going to be doing this every week. I'm Aspie drummer. I am autistic, and I've been playing drums for over 30 years. So we'll see you next time on Aspie Drummer.